So in case you couldn't tell from my profile picture, I'm rocking a mini fro. Not the Smash Bros cut though, I try to get lined up as frequently as possible. Jokes aside, while I haven't gone on my way to personally try out many different style options that come with my hair texture all that much, I'm constantly grateful for being blessed with the most versatile hairstyle of all. Afros, braids, locks, waves, the multiple variations of those, you name it. All of that aside, many will agree with me when I say that the nurturing and styling of black hair is an art form in of itself, especially with the various uses and patterns innovated with the movement and survival of the culture. And within all this, despite the dynamism that these tighter curls bring into the various mediums of art, communicated with game development, animation, and etc., it's unfortunate that I haven't seen too many examples of these styles being shown within the media. Okay, let me scratch that. There hasn't been too many times where I've seen positive portrayals of our hair in what we consume. Black consumers have been complaining about this for a while, but especially in video games, there's a frankly unacceptable disparity of black hairstyles compared to everybody else. We can have Edna Mode, Eren Yeager, and Light Yagami, but not even any locks. There's a video by Veritas Joe that perfectly captures our gripes with the bare bones quota that many studios try to meet. You know what, let me actually roll a clip.
Listen, if you can make fucking Shrek in this game, then why is the customization so limited for one easily implementable thing? Oh my god, Face Jab's character looks just like him. Yeah, that's the white gaming experience. See, I can't make that same tweet. I want to be a cool old-timey warrior with long, luxurious locks in my head. I can't make my character look like me, and I'm a bitch about it. Cause like, why? It's not fair. I don't want to have to like play 2K for good black hairstyles. I don't hate myself. I love myself. You never gonna see me on that shit.
Now, that video is funny and you should definitely watch it on your own time, but what is this video about? While this definitely is a topic that's increasingly frustrating me within the past few years, all of my videos up to this point have had either a positive or neutral perspective on the conversations I bring up, and I'd like to continue that here. So in this video, I wish to explore a few examples of black hair done right, not only in games but in animation, as a way for others to look into how to respectfully represent an integral part of our culture, as well as observing the nuances and changes made to improve on black character design in general, because there doesn't seem to me too many organized guides exploring positive approaches throughout different mediums, so hopefully this video helps out a little bit. With that being said, let's get into it. Let's start with probably the most involved and complicated medium here, gaming. Yep, we're going there. Definitely the most laboring and stressful of art forms I'll be talking about today. This amalgamation of skill sets and experience with different genres hasn't exactly taken the time to put in more variety, other than the Jackson or Bernie Mac, with the exception of sports and fighting games. However, the surrounding optics aren't flattering, I'll tell you that much. Regardless, there are some good examples to highlight. Fortnite undoubtedly has some of the best black hair in all of gaming, doing better than most AAA titles, and no, I am not joking. As much as I have mixed feelings towards Epic Games, one thing they've yet to miss on is their cosmetics, specifically within Fortnite. The game's player base and public opinion has definitely fluctuated throughout its lifespan, but I've noticed that the usual defining factor that brings veteran players and such back are their skins, mainly their collabs. I mean, the Dragon Ball sets made C-Day come back and upload, so they definitely know what they're doing. That being said, I've noticed that Fortnite always made an effort to try and represent different groups of people, even back to the beginning of Battle Royale. When you think about it, notice how all the default skins from Chapter 1 onwards are of a different race, as well as randomized. While you don't necessarily have the choice to choose these characters, which is a bummer, on the chance that you get the default skin that most represents you, you might see a little bit of yourself in the game. I don't know. I just think it's cool that the game's done that since the beginning. As Battle Royale and its game style would go on and evolve, so did the details of each cosmetic. The first 2 years or so of Battle Royale mostly relied on the default basis they already had, but Chapter 2 onward really pushed what the ideal look of Fortnite should be. Many collaborations and lore set their skins captured a more detailed likeness, and I truly believe that this decision opened the gates to more variety within the hair and facial features. It surprises me at how much variety this game has in its styling, without the players needing to take action on their own. Speaking of The Sims, while doing some research, I found out that there's a whole movement on getting EA to add more accurate skin tones to Sims 4 back in 2020. This might not be the most relevant, but it's pretty annoying when the life simulation with its main appeal arguably being customization makes little to no efforts to actively include different skin tones and hair types within the base game. And this wouldn't be as bad if this turnaround happened within a short amount of time, but It didn't. For context, The Sims 4 came out in 2014, so it took EA upwards to 6 years to start making some of these changes. That is trash. Back to the hairstyles though, the game has made improvements. I'll give credit where credit is due. Like I mentioned previously, 2020 and onward, The Sims did step up their game, adding more skin tones and hair varieties. There's a DLC pack that dropped a few months ago at the time of making this, with Lacey Redway, a renowned hairstylist in the entertainment business, being put on board to design 5 different styles. And looking at some screenshots here, this is actually amazing stuff. There's an important detail within the last sentence, but we'll get back to that point later on. However, the expansion pack is $40, almost a full price game, so that's more an issue with EA and The Sims 4 in general, so let's move on. Telltale's The Walking Dead is what I believe to be a perfect example of expanding scope and variety within the passage of time. As the art style of the series improved, so did its diversity and character design, and I wish to quickly go over how much they grew, mainly focusing on seasons 1 and 4. By the way, I'm not talking about Clementine because...
Ugh, what did you do, dude?
Well, we're not talking about Clementine. Instead, we're starting with Lee, and he looks alright. Now, it's important to mention that he's 37. I don't expect him to have the crispiest lineup, but yeah, it's cool. It's cool. Going into season 4, and besides the obvious graphical changes, the upgrades in hair variety is immaculate. Like, look at AJ, I know y'all see that fro. The textures and shapes really ties into the more realistic comic book style season 4 works with, giving a good sense of cohesion. Telltale didn't necessarily have bad attempts in the Walking Dead series, but pre-season 4, most notable characters usually had lower cuts, maybe an afro here and there, so I'm glad that season 4 stepped up its definition a little bit. They even lined up the zombies in the game.
Is there a Barbara Walker there? Are they really lining niggas up? This is crazy. Maybe they are human.
Back to the cohesion topic, I think there's an issue that games like The Sims face to match the styles of everything else. The fact that they use a cauliflower as a reference for the afro during the conceptual stage and still ended up with this, that is blasphemic. This video by BuzzFeed Multiplayer summarizes how embarrassing it was for EA to take as long as they did to start improving their cosmetics. However, I'll get back to the cohesion of hairstyle with black hair later, so put a pin in that. Apex Legends is really interesting, with characters like Lifeline, Bangalore, and Seer. Fun fact, according to a 5-year study by Diamond Lobby, Apex was actually considered the most diverse video game in 2022, so that's pretty good. Maybe in a future video I can dive deeper into why that is. Animal Crossing added waves a few years ago. That was cool. Oh yeah, Spider-Man Miles Morales was a complete 180. In the original PS4 game, Miles unfortunately got cursed with the Smash Bros cut. You've definitely seen it in the wild at some point. Chances are you, the viewer, may have rocked this back in the day as a kid and are probably experiencing secondhand embarrassment. It's truly an epidemic that needs to be addressed. I don't know, maybe in the future. However, when the Miles Morales teaser dropped in 2020 with the crispy lineup in the fade, there was unanimous praise. A redemption, if you will. And it isn't even necessarily the cut itself, as it is a low cut, but it's how it's executed, with the way the fade looks actually accurate and realistic. As Nathan said like 8 years ago, the process of finding a perfect barber for you can be described as a spiritual journey. Speaking of spirits, Hogwarts Legacy, that was a horrible. Ignoring J.K. Rowling's everything for a second, I'm gonna be completely honest. I think the quality of some of these styles is better than 2K and FIFA. Different froze, different locks, different fades, actual volume, and with adequate amounts of detail. It was so sick seeing how many were excited to have more than 2-3 options to see themselves in a game where you can mess around as a wizard. You can tell that the developers really cared about getting it right. But the last game I wish to talk about is Horizon Forbidden West and the conundrum surrounding some of the character designs. The design of Val is what I believe to be an accurate benchmark as to where a decent chunk of the industry plays currently within accuracy in gaming. At a quick glance, you may think that his hair is some heat, and you'd be right to an extent. The volume and length of these locks is crazy detailed, as with many of the models in the game from what I know of. However, the excitement is dwindled when you realize that both his sides and his beard use the straight strands and textures. The current state I see within the industry is that more studios are trying and attempting to add more variety to represent more people, which is objectively a plus. However, few of these companies go beyond the bare bones defaults that we've been used to. If you're going to put in the effort, go all the way instead of giving 50%. The point is, there's more people trying than like 5 years ago, so that's a plus? I don't know, I'm not a fan of this complacency. And I'm not really familiar with the realm of gaming in general, if I'm being honest. Basically, I'm not a gamer, I just play games. This next section, however, is where I'm much more familiar, so be sure to stay tuned if you want. Animation. I initially was going to mix 2D and 3D together into a lump sum, but it feels more appropriate to turn both dimensions into subsections to create less clutter. That being said, let's start with 2D here. Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. If I didn't mention it now, I'd probably ramble on about it for another 8 minutes. In my positive examples of black media video, I talked about Hair Today Gone Tomorrow, an excellent deconstruction of the perception and care of type 4 hair, but I didn't go into the character designs themselves. The show is very stylized, opting for sharp geometric shapes, which I am all for in animation. If you look at the Lafayette family, there's a few constants to take note of here. Thick and jagged lines, ununiform, but not discombobulated or whack. They create very recognizable silhouettes, and the choice to do the color scribbles with the bold outlines made perfect sense with the comic book inspired style the series has. This is a good example of how to add artistic flair while still being respectful. Another series that does black hair excellently would have to be Michiko the Hatchin. To be honest, this show was an excellent reference and opportunity to generally study black features in the style of anime, not even just looking at the main characters, but observing the side characters, one-offs, background characters. There's so much to take in. There's a reason why so many black women on the internet use either Michiko or Atsuko as their profile pictures, because it's one of the rare occurrences in anime unapologetically respects our features both artistically and accurately. Besides those two characters, my favorite design in this series would have to be Satoshi's. Absolutely horrible human being, I had to clarify, but with a swaggy fashion sense. I can't hate on it. I love how crisp and natural these afros look in the show. In general, it serves as a good reference all around as to how to draw black people in the anime style. And I can't go further without mentioning the Boondocks, one of the most iconic black franchises in American media. Notable figures here would be LaSalle Thomas and Sung Kim. Both artists had a major hand in the art style the Boondocks is most recognized for, with LaSalle Thomas having been lead character designer and co-director for the earlier seasons, also having a big hand into some of the next few projects I'll be talking about. Sung Kim, on the other hand, is a master. Y'all remember the Blind Samurai sequence? These were his storyboards. Most concept art in shows aren't this detailed. Meanwhile, he did and continues to pump this amount for animation. I don't know what Devil Fruit he ate or Dragon Balls he collected, but this guy is built differently. Jokes aside, he was able to translate the anime-inspired iteration of the characters to a more chibi-esque simplified style for the reboot strips and canceled game, as well as a more detailed and painterly style for the concept art on the canceled animated reboot. Just checking his social media and personal work, you can see his experience on drawing people of different races and cultures. I definitely recommend him as someone to study from as an artist, as his variety is vast to say the least. Black Dynamite not only has a sharper design language that I enjoy in newer animation, but the hard shadows allow for more graphic and interesting approaches to coloring the hair. Like, look at this sequence. The context of the project is as important when thinking of design, and the blaxploitation influence and parodic nature of this cartoon allows for more outlandish detail in animation, treating us with these immaculate character designs and color palettes. I mentioned context and cohesion throughout this section because of a certain issue I've observed throughout the years. I've noticed that many non-black artists, mainly referring to independent and freelancers, claim that drawing black hair wouldn't fit with their art style, which confuses me on a multitude of levels. It's very similar to the argument where darker skin tones apparently don't fit your art style either. Not really, it's really just a lack of understanding with color theory. Within the past few minutes, I already listed a variety of examples from anime to sharp western to comic book-esque. But if we want to go even simpler, look no further than Craig the Creek. This is about as simple as it gets with character design here, as it eases up on the animation, but look at these shapes. Very simple stuff, but nuanced enough to work within a silhouette and still look like actual hair. And again, these designs are made with animation in mind, so having to account for constant movement as opposed to still pieces in other digital art like some of you are watching. And it doesn't even have to be solid shapes either. Young Love premiering on HBO Max soon. I am not calling it just Max. has a clear amount of detail in its hair. In this image alone, you can see the textures used for the locks, afros, and puffs. It's not even a matter of things like texture clashing with simplicity, because as you can see, there's a way to go about it. So the narrative that her hairstyles are too complicated or too detailed or whichever excuse in the book you have just doesn't work. I think it's simply a lack of effort to understand how type 4 hair works. Now, if you're watching and you don't know how to draw or sculpt black hair or facial features, that in of itself is completely fine. None of us are born how to draw this stuff. But if you actively avoid or try making excuses as to why you can't do it, that's where problems start to happen. Basically, there's a difference between someone trying and maybe failing the first few times and someone who isn't but continues to complain. If you haven't even attempted but still make excuses as to why it doesn't work, we don't want to hear it. I'm not sorry. If you can understand and confidently draw different anatomy parts of the face, of the body, manipulate forms like hands, commonly regarded as one of the artist's worst enemies, and even draw straight hair with no issues, what exactly in your arsenal of skills prevents you from merely learning to try and draw a curlier hair texture? That's not even me being cynical. It's something I truly want you to think about, at least if you expressed these sentiments in the past before. Also, I almost forgot to mention Afro Samurai. That's all I had to say. Now, you would think that adding a dimension would increase the scarcity and effort, but you'd be surprised at how 3D animation has stepped up their game in the past year or so. Starting off strong would be Mel and Echo from the hit series Arcane. I've never played League, so I didn't know until a few months after the first season that Echo actually had a mohawk in the game, which I actually don't hate. That being said, whoever decided to switch that out for locks deserves a raise. I think it works perfectly with his character in the arc he goes through in the first season. And Mel?
Give her her tens. Give her her tens. Give her what she's... That's one thing about me. I give tens where tens are due.
I don't think I can say everything that makes her appearance excellent, but I can confidently say that she's one of the best black character designs in all of animation. There's a presence of such divinity that's nearly indescribable. There's no mistake as to why Evening Montero, the character designer behind her, won an Annie Award for what can only be described as perfection here. Fun fact, they also had a huge hand in the character design of Hobie Brown, aka Spider-Punk, who I'll get into later. The Arcane craze hit artists of all skill sets and professions, as the show is full of wonderful interpretations of these game characters. If you need that painterly style, this is it. This is pretty much how you do it. The Sea Beast and My Dad the Bounty Hunter on Netflix also have good examples of black character design in 3D. I can't show much because of copyright, but both series saw a good variety of different lighting conditions of the hair and skin, the way the ambiance affects the light direction in the staging. In fact, in an interview with The Hollywood Performer, Everett Downey Jr. spoke about the having of effort and complacency that many in the animation industry exhibit when trying to get down the right hair texture. In the same article, Patrick Harpin, co-showrunner, went into the extra effort that members like Yuki Demers put forward in accurate character design, noting lighting study sessions to understand the way light bounces off darker skin. The attention to detail and accuracy speaks to how much the crew of the series cares, understanding the importance in tasks like these and putting in 100% all the same. And it's important to stress that care is not only about accuracy but stylizing. Case in point, Intergalactic. Everybody makes a connection from this special to Spider-Verse, but the approaches are fairly different. Spider-Verse, being inspired by its origins, goes for halftones, respecting the comic book look these characters came from. Meanwhile, Intergalactic opts for a painterly type of vibe, using brushstrokes to define everything from facial features to clothing. And looking at the hair here, it's simplified appropriately. You can see the types of the shapes they use, but they're broken down by the brushstrokes used to represent the different strands. Adequate effort was put into matching the vibe of the project, and it's a treat to watch. Now, for my favorite project of everything I mentioned up to this point, and the main reason I ended up making the video in the first place, Across the Spider-Verse. Especially for these two, Spider-Punk and Spider-Bite have been the topic of many conversations and think pieces surrounding topics like black solidarity and variety. The personality that exudes from both of these figures in the time they had in the sequel made them audience favorites, and the way they look was a big part of that. Like I mentioned before, Evening Montero had a hand in deciding Hobie Brown, but more so his outside appearance and facial features. In this Twitter thread, he talks about the process of combining blackness, punk, and queerness all into one during their explorations, and it's something you immediately get down with as an audience member. Looking at the various hair choices, I'm so glad they decided to go with wigs. There's really a mainstream black superhero now that proudly rocks wigs. Seeing all the black cosplayers from MomoCon and DreamCon embracing their features, putting on these alternative fits with little to no hassle, these kids are gonna grow up and see him as an icon. Same with Spider-Bite as well. There's a scene getting towards the ending just before Miles sneaks into the teleporter to escape. And while everybody's fighting for their life to chase this guy, she's just chilling looking at CC to put on. I think it's the fact that so many different hairstyles were just casually being experimented on with no second thought. This was probably one of my most hyped moments in the theater, being topped by Donald Glover reprising his Prowler role and the GOAT reprising his role for 3 lines of dialogue. And she's one of the only characters that makes me mad at what we could have gone concept character design wise. If you look at Chris Anka's Twitter, one of the concepts was that she would have rocked a digitized afro, one with pixels making up his mask. And why didn't we get this? Again, this is how to add artistic flair while still being respectful to the culture. The second to last project I want to mention has to be Encanto. I really wish this film was talked about a little more after its initial wave, considering this was the first Disney movie to have shown every hair type from 1A to 4C, with many different variations by the characters within the environment. This attention to detail was the result of over a decade of the meticulous development of tools by programs such as Tonic, helping to simulate different hair types. And now that technology has advanced a ton since 2010, it's become much easier, relatively speaking, to create different styles from all hair textures. I'm mainly giving credit to the artists, developers, and advisors who use years of reference and research to slowly build a catalog of tools to represent different people from all walks of life. As for the multi-billion-dollar corporation, come on. The last project is a fairly new one, but an important milestone nonetheless, by the name of Kazazimoto Generation Fire. This show serves as an animated anthology series, showing a different story each episode with animators from 6 different countries involved in the project. The big detail is that each episode showcases a different animated style, with all episodes centering different approaches to Afrofuturism within the respective cultures. Not only is this a series Africans have been yearning for the longest, this is by far one of the most vast series to reference and study black character design. 10 different episodes going through different approaches and styles to 2D and 3D animation. I'd go as far to say that the amount of variety is likely to match up with whatever art style you personally use. For real though, seeing the success of these productions fills me with such joy that this next generation is gonna grow up with this type of variety and empowerment. And when you think about it, that's low-key the goal, putting in as much effort to let the next generation get inspired by this stuff early, to introduce these characters during those pivotal years, making sure that they got it better than us. Because I don't know how much black people would have wanted to be immersed in the state of entertainment we're in when they were kids, but I imagine that the number is many. So why is this video as long as it is, and what's the deal with affirming the rich examples of media? What reason do I have to explain why the accuracy of black hair is at its height and yet not as high as it could be? Because to be blunt, a lot of y'all don't even try to get it right. And let's talk about this for a second. You've made it this far, you might as well finish. Hopefully it just hit the right audience. We already know about the discriminatory practices towards black people, black women in particular, with our hair, from job applications to simply public interaction, while simultaneously feeling the need to touch our hair unprovoked. But that's of common knowledge and inflicted on by random people, because unfortunately, this negligence goes all the way to professional settings behind the scenes with various hairstylists. I remember seeing a TikTok pop up on my Instagram feed of an individual listing multiple black actors and actresses who gave their bad experiences with hair before filming. And what makes this frustrating is that this video was a part 2. Why was there a first part in the first place, let alone a second? I won't get too much into the specific people. I'll link both the TikTok and an Insider article for you to look into on your own time, but the contents of both include multiple instances of not only major knowledge gaps by stylists on stylizing black hair, but different actors and actresses having to do their own, oftentimes way earlier than everybody else, due to not trusting that they won't be done wrong on the screen and looking unpresentable. And if you think I'm reaching by any chance, in 2021, Megan Good shared an instance of getting burn marks on her head because the stylist lied about knowing how to press her hair. So yeah, it's a problem. And more bluntly, it isn't fair. I don't think it's fair for us to have to do the heavy lifting for problems that can easily be handled with simply asking for help and consultation. I don't think it's fair that black stylists and artists had to accommodate for every texture on the spectrum, but we aren't given the same energy, if at all. And I don't think it's fair for us to be told that we're doing too much whenever we speak up on it. And this is just a general feeling that spans throughout all the stuff we like to consume. Hearing all this, you probably have a few questions. How is it that professionals are able to inch their way up to the biggest productions in the industry, working with multiple multiple high-profile celebrities throughout their careers, and somehow being able to get away with having little to no experience with type 3 or 4 hair. And more importantly, who is to blame for the lack of knowledge? Whilst thinking about the topic, I didn't know whether the fault was on the individual or the cosmetology curriculum, but after doing some research, it turns out to be both. This just doesn't add up. Entertainment can be just as much a reflection of reality as it is an escape, so when you see stuff like this, it sucks. If anything, it feels reductive, especially in the time period we're in today. And I don't like the way that some people have merely settled on what we have now. It's 2023 in an age where digital interaction is more integrated than ever. I'm not the Google is free type of person, but when there's not even an ounce of effort put into trying or just refusal, it speaks a lot to how we're often seen as an afterthought in show business. And it's hard not to understand why we get frustrated whenever simple suggestions are ignored or criticized. So if after all I've said up to this point still for whatever reason doesn't make sense, you either get it or you don't. So what now? What is the problem and solution? What can be done to rectify this issue from the industry level? If you've seen videos with similar topics, the common conclusion is that the bad representation is the product of not having enough, if any, black people within these spaces, and I 100% agree. In his video on black video games, the storyteller said that each game without proper input from us behind the scenes relies on an approximation of blackness, and that's stuck with me ever since. As for the solution, the most straightforward answer is hire more black people. That's literally it. I alluded to this back in the gaming section, but a lot of the good black designs seen in media today were made, if not extremely supervised, by us. For the Growing Together expansion pack, Redway spoke on how she made sure to give as much specific feedback to achieve accuracy. And this is what happens when you get input. We're the ones that know our hair inside and out more often than not. So allowing us to take control and supervise limits the amount of mistakes made with details missed. And I think being open to feedback is another thing I think a lot of non-black artists don't attempt to try, in fear of getting accused of racism, but without even asking for help. Like I said before, as long as you're actively trying to improve and ask for help, I promise you won't be looked down upon unless you show us something obviously crazy. Pretty much, do what Across the Spider-Verse did. There's an interview by Sony with the main cast members, and the first half is literally everyone gushing about the attention to detail and the intentionality the crew made towards representing different cultures. I remember a good friend of mine texting me about the onomatopoeias being written in Hindi in the city of Bombarded. In fact, they hit up Karan's Sony to come into the writer's room and pitch ideas based on his experiences growing up in India because they didn't feel like what they were doing was culturally specific. The crew decided to take initiative in order to get the details down, and that's important to people. The interview also reviews a quote from Phil Lord, which I personally believe speaks volumes. If 10% of the audience understands and gets it, that's important to me in relation to adding smaller details of cultures represented. Taking initiative, asking for feedback, as well as just hiring the people you want to represent would do wonders in making sure people are seen the right way on these screens. As for those who are more freelancers, hobbyists, stuff of that sort, I don't want to be the Google is free guy, so I got you covered. I took the time to compile a Google document with different resources, references, and videos, going over the different ways to draw or sculpt our features. So if you come across this video and see someone lost on where to start to improve their reference points, hopefully this at least serves as a jumping point if anything else. And again, I want to repeat, as long as you're actively trying, you'll be fine, and don't be afraid to ask for help. But that's pretty much the end of what I gotta say. I've had a ton of gripes as to how to approach this project, so hopefully it makes sense. If you don't feel like subscribing yet, that's fine, but I would really appreciate a comment at least. Videos like these I feel thrive the most from constructive feedback, so I want to know areas I can improve in. This is my biggest video to date, so that's why it took so long. I'm sorry about that. Hopefully I can be more consistent, as since I'm still new, I'm still trying things out, so expect something maybe a little different. I don't know, we'll see how this goes. Other than that, that's pretty much it. Okay, bye.